The library door burst open with such force that several leather-bound volumes tumbled from their shelves. Lady Sophia Ashworth stumbled inside, her evening gown torn at the shoulder, a livid bruise already forming on her wrist where fingers had gripped too tightly. She pressed herself against the door, her breath coming in ragged gasps, trembling hands fumbling with the lock. "Please," she whispered to the empty air. "Please, just leave me alone." Except the room wasn't empty. A voice emerged from the shadows near the fireplace. Deep, commanding, edged with something that might have been rage carefully controlled. "Who did this to you?" Sophia's head snapped up. There, rising from a leather chair like a storm given human form, stood a man she'd never seen before. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair shot through with silver at the temples despite appearing no older than 35. His face was all harsh angles and old scars, one running from his left eyebrow to his jaw. His eyes, God! His eyes were the color of winter steel, and they were fixed on her torn dress and bruised wrist with an intensity that made her forget to breathe. "I asked you a question." His voice was quieter now, but somehow more dangerous. "Who did this to you?" 3 hours earlier, the Dowager Duchess of Thornhill's annual winter ball had been in full splendor. Every candelabra blazed. Every mirror reflected the cream of English society in their finest silks and jewels. And in the midst of it all, Lady Sophia Ashworth played her role with the practiced perfection of someone who knew that survival depended on flawless performance. She was 24, unmarried, and for the past 2 years engaged to Viscount Edmund Blackwood, a man whose charm in public was matched only by his cruelty in private. "Smile, Sophia," Edmund had murmured earlier that evening, his fingers digging into her arm hard enough to leave marks beneath her long gloves. "We wouldn't want anyone to think you're unhappy with our arrangement." Their arrangement. That was what he called it. What society called a brilliant match. The orphan daughter of a minor baron wedding a wealthy viscount with connections to half the peerage. What Sophia called a cage that grew smaller every day. Her parents had died when she was 19, leaving her in the guardianship of her uncle, Lord William Ashworth, who'd wasted no time arranging her betrothal to Edmund. For her own good, he'd said. For her security and future. He'd never asked if Edmund made her feel safe. He'd never noticed the way she flinched when Edmund reached for her, or how she'd grown quieter with each passing month, or how the light had slowly died in her eyes. 2 years. 2 years of Edmund's possessiveness masquerading as devotion. 2 years of his temper erupting behind closed doors, always careful never to leave marks where society might see. 2 years of being told she was fortunate, that she should be grateful, that no other man would want a penniless orphan with no family to protect her. Tonight was no different. Edmund had been drinking. He always drank at balls, and his mood had darkened as he'd watched her dance with other gentlemen. Required by propriety, those dances, but Edmund saw conspiracy in every smile, infidelity in every polite conversation. "You were flirting with Lord Hastings," he'd hissed when she'd returned to his side after a perfectly innocent cotillion. "I was dancing, Edmund, as you know I must." His hand had closed around her wrist like a vice. "Don't mock me, Sophia. I saw how you looked at him." She hadn't looked at Lord Hastings in any particular way. She'd been too busy calculating how many more months until their wedding. How many more days until she'd be completely under Edmund's control with no one to intervene. No one to notice, no one to care. "I need some air," she'd said, trying to pull away. "You need to remember your place." His voice was soft, deadly. "You need to remember that you belong to me, that you are nothing without me, that if you ever embarrass me again." She'd wrenched free and run. Stupid, desperate, but she'd run anyway, through the ballroom, past the curious stairs, into the darkened corridors of Thornhill Manor, searching for anywhere he couldn't follow, anywhere she could breathe, anywhere she could pretend for just a moment that she wasn't trapped. The library. She'd found the library, thought it empty, thought herself safe. She'd been wrong. Now she stood with her back pressed against the locked door, staring at the scarred stranger who watched her with those terrible, knowing eyes. "I'm sorry," Sophia managed, her voice shaking. "I didn't know anyone was here. I'll go." You'll stay exactly where you are. He moved closer, and Sophia instinctively pressed harder against the door. He stopped immediately, his expression shifting from anger to something that might have been understanding. I'm not going to hurt you, but I am going to ask you one more time. Who did this? Sophia's hand flew to her torn shoulder, a futile attempt to hide the damage. It's nothing. I caught my dress on a door handle. Don't lie to me. His voice was still quiet, but there was steel beneath the words. I've been to war, Lady Ashworth, she whispered. Lady Sophia Ashworth. Lady Ashworth. He inclined his head slightly, a gesture that managed to be both respectful and somehow mocking of the propriety it represented. I'm Thornhill. Alexander Thornhill, Duke of Thornhill. This is my mother's house, which means this is my library, which means that man who hurt you is currently a guest under my roof. The Duke of Thornhill. Sophia felt the blood drain from her face. She'd heard of him, of course. Everyone had. The War Duke, they called him. He'd spent 15 years fighting on the peninsula, earning a reputation for brutal efficiency and tactical brilliance. His father had died 8 months ago, forcing him home to assume the title he'd apparently never wanted. He was a legend, a ghost story, a man who'd seen so much death that he could no longer tolerate the frivolity of society. And she just burst into his private sanctuary, bleeding and desperate and completely at his mercy. Your Grace, I apologize for the intrusion. Stop apologizing. He moved to a sideboard and poured brandy into a crystal glass, then crossed to her and held it out. When she hesitated, he said more gently, You're shaking. Drink. Sophia took the glass with trembling hands and sipped. The brandy burned, but it was a clean burn. Nothing like the cold fear that had been her constant companion for 2 years. Now, the Duke said, settling into the chair he'd been occupying when she'd burst in, deliberately putting distance between them. Tell me what happened. And before you invent another story about door handles, understand that I've seen men broken by war, by torture, by horrors you couldn't imagine. I know what fear looks like, Lady Ashworth. I know what abuse looks like. And I know the difference between an accident and someone being hurt deliberately. Sophia stared at him, this scarred warrior who spoke of torture and war with the same casual tone other men used to discuss horse breeding. Part of her wanted to maintain the fiction, to protect herself with lies the way she'd been protecting herself for 2 years. But another part, the part that was so desperately tired of pretending, wanted to tell someone the truth. My fiancé, she said finally, her voice barely audible. Viscount Blackwood. He doesn't like it when I dance with other men, when I speak to other men, when I smile at other men. He says I'm his, and I need to remember that. The Duke's expression didn't change, but Sophia saw his hands tighten on the arms of his chair. How long? 2 years. Since our engagement. And you haven't broken the engagement because I'm an orphan with no family, no fortune, and no alternatives. The words came out bitter, harsh. Because my uncle arranged the match and society considers it brilliant. Because Edmund is charming in public and everyone thinks I'm fortunate to have caught his attention. Because if I try to leave, he'll destroy what little reputation I have left, and then I'll have nothing. Not even the illusion of security. She drained the brandy and set the glass down with shaking hands. I shouldn't have told you that. Please, forget I said anything. I'll return to the ballroom. No. The single word carried absolute authority. You will not return to that man tonight. Your Grace. Alexander. He stood, and Sophia realized just how physically imposing he was. Not threateningly exactly, but with a presence that filled the room. If we're going to conspire together, we should use given names. Conspire. Sophia's voice cracked. Your Grace, Alexander. I'm not asking for your help. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed a moment to hide from the man who's terrorizing you. Alexander's voice was calm, almost conversational. I understand. I've done plenty of hiding myself since returning from the war. This library has been my sanctuary for 8 months. Books don't judge. Books don't demand conversation. Books don't look at you like you're broken. The unexpected confession startled Sophia into silence. But here's what you need to understand, Sophia. The use of her given name sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. I've spent 15 years fighting for England. I've killed men who needed killing. I've protected people who couldn't protect themselves. And now I'm home, and society expects me to smile and dance and pretend that I'm not haunted by everything I've seen. He moved closer, and this time Sophia didn't press against the door. I'm not good at pretending. I'm not good at propriety or patience or tolerating injustice. What I am good at is recognizing when someone needs defending. And you, Sophia Ashworth, need defending. You don't even know me. I know enough. His eyes held hers. I know you're brave enough to run when you need to, smart enough to find sanctuary, and strong enough to tell me the truth when lying would have been easier. That's more than I need to know. Sophia felt tears threatening and blinked them back furiously. She'd learned not to cry. Tears made Edmund angry. Tears were my weakness. Tears were ammunition. What would you have me do? She asked. Break the engagement? Edmund will ruin me. My uncle will disown me. Society will say I'm unstable, ungrateful. A woman who doesn't know her own good fortune. Let them say it. Alexander's voice was fierce. Let your uncle disown you. Let society gossip. You'll survive. You've survived 2 years with a man who hurts you. You're stronger than any of them. And what will I survive on? Air? Hope? I have no money, your grace. No family. No prospects. Breaking this engagement means destitution. Then marry me instead. The words hung in the air between them, impossible and absurd. Sophia laughed, a broken sound. You're not serious. I'm completely serious. Alexander leaned against his desk, arms crossed. I need a wife. Society expects it. My mother has been parading eligible young ladies through my drawing room for months, and every single one of them looks at me like I'm either a war trophy to be won or a dangerous beast to be tamed. You need protection and security. We could help each other. That's insane. We've known each other for 10 minutes. I've made military decisions with less information that determined whether men lived or died. His tone was matter-of-fact. This is considerably less complicated. You marry me, you're immediately under my protection. Your fiancé can't touch you. Your uncle can't control you. Society can gossip all they like, but no one will dare cross a duchess, particularly not the Duchess of Thornhill. Sophia stared at him, searching for signs of mockery or cruelty, the hidden traps she'd learned to anticipate with Edmund. She found only steady certainty in those winter steel eyes. Why would you do this? She whispered. Why would you tie yourself to a woman you don't know, don't love, will never love? Something flickered across Alexander's face. Pain, perhaps, or old grief. Because I watched good men die for causes they believed in. Because I've seen what happens when people with power abuse those without it. Because I'm tired of pretending I care about society's rules when those rules protect men like your fiancé and abandon women like you. He paused. And because you burst into my library like a force of nature, and for the first time in 8 months, I felt something other than emptiness. The confession was raw, honest in a way that stole Sophia's breath. This is mad, she said. War makes you comfortable with madness. People will talk. Let them. Edmund will be furious. Good. Alexander's smile was sharp, dangerous. Let him be furious. Let him rage. He can't do a damn thing about it. You'll be mine, Sophia, under my protection. And I promise you this, no one will ever hurt you again. The weight of those words settled over Sophia like a blanket. Protection. Safety. The promise that someone would stand between her and harm. She'd forgotten what that felt like. I don't love you, she said, testing the waters. I don't love you either, Alexander replied calmly. This is a practical arrangement, a marriage of convenience. You get security and freedom from abuse. I get a wife to satisfy society's expectations and someone who won't demand emotional intimacy I can't provide. It should have been insulting. Instead, it felt like the first honest thing anyone had offered her in 2 years. When? Sophia asked. Alexander's expression shifted to something that might have been surprise or satisfaction. You're agreeing? I'm asking when. If we're going to do something this reckless, we should do it quickly before either of us comes to our senses. Tomorrow. Special license. My mother's chapel. Witnesses can be arranged. Tomorrow, Sophia repeated, tasting the word. Freedom. Safety. A future that didn't involve Edmund's hands leaving bruises where no one would see. Tomorrow, Alexander confirmed. But first, we need to handle tonight. What do you mean? His smile was absolutely predatory. I mean that your fiancé is currently in my ballroom, probably searching for you. And I think it's time he learned that his behavior has consequences. Alexander offered Sophia his arm. Can you walk back into that ballroom with your head high? Sophia looked at him, this scarred warrior who'd offered her escape without asking for anything in return except honesty. With you beside me? Yes. Good. Because we're about to create the scandal of the season. He led her to a small chamber off the library where his mother apparently kept emergency supplies for guests. Within minutes, Sophia's torn dress had been pinned and arranged to hide the damage, though the bruise on her wrist remained visible. Leave it, Alexander said when she moved to adjust her glove. Let them see. It will cause talk. That's the idea. They walked through Thornhill Manor's corridors side by side, and Sophia felt something she'd almost forgotten: power. Not the kind Edmund wielded, which came from fear and control, but the quiet strength of knowing someone stood beside you, ready to fight. The ballroom fell silent when they entered. Every conversation stopped. Every eye turned to watch the War Duke escort an unknown lady through the crowd, her dress subtly torn, his expression absolutely murderous. Sophia saw Edmund immediately. He stood near the refreshment table, his handsome face twisted with barely concealed rage. When his eyes met hers, she saw the promise of violence there, the certainty that she would pay for this embarrassment. Then Alexander's hand covered hers on his arm, warm and solid and steady, and the fear receded. Your Grace. The Dowager Duchess of Thornhill swept toward them, her expression concerned. Alexander, dear, is everything quite all right? No, Mother, everything is not all right. Alexander's voice carried across the ballroom with military precision. But it will be. Lady Sophia Ashworth has just agreed to become my wife. The silence that followed was absolute. Then the whispers began. Shocked, scandalized, delighted. The War Duke, engaged after a single evening? To a woman no one knew was even in his company? To a woman who was already betrothed to Viscount Blackwood? Edmund started forward, his face flushed with fury. This is absurd. Sophia, what nonsense. Viscount Blackwood. Alexander didn't raise his voice, but something in his tone stopped Edmund mid-stride. I believe Lady Ashworth's engagement to you is now terminated. You can't simply steal another man's fiancé. I'm not stealing anyone. Alexander's smile was cold. Lady Ashworth is making a choice. She's choosing a man who will protect her rather than one who bruises her. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Edmund's face went white, then red. I don't know what lies she's told you. Look at her wrist, Blackwood. Alexander's voice was deadly quiet. Look at the marks you left. Then look at my face and understand that if you ever come near her again, what I did to enemy soldiers in the peninsula will seem merciful compared to what I'll do to you. The threat was explicit, shocking, and completely inappropriate for a ballroom. It was also absolutely effective. Edmund looked at Sophia, at the bruises, at her lifted chin, at the way she stood beside the War Duke like she'd found sanctuary, and something in his expression shifted. No remorse, never remorse, but calculation, understanding that he'd lost. You'll regret this, Edmund said to Sophia, his voice low. You'll come crawling back when you realize what you've given up. She's given up precisely nothing, Alexander interrupted. She's gained everything. Now I suggest you leave my mother's ball before I have you removed. Forcibly, if necessary. Edmund's hands clenched into fists, but he knew he was beaten. In a contest between a viscount and a duke, there was only ever one victor. He turned and stalked toward the exit, pausing once to look back at Sophia with such hatred that she felt ice slide down her spine. Then Alexander stepped slightly in front of her, blocking Edmund's view, and the moment shattered. "Well?" the Dowager Duchess said into stunned silence. "This is certainly unexpected. Alexander, dear, perhaps you should have consulted me before announcing your engagement in the middle of my ball." "I apologize, Mother, but some things can't wait for propriety." The Dowager studied Sophia with sharp blue eyes that reminded her distinctly of her son's. "Lady Ashworth, I don't believe we've been introduced, though I know your late parents were respectable people. Are you quite certain you wish to marry my son? He's not an easy man. War has changed him." "I'm certain, Your Grace," Sophia said, finding her voice. "If he'll have me. He's already declared it in front of half of London society. I'd say you're rather committed." The Dowager's expression softened. "Come, child, let's get you somewhere more private." Alexander stopped glowering at everyone. "You're frightening the guests." "Good," Alexander muttered. But he followed as his mother led them from the ballroom. They ended up in a small sitting room, blessedly quiet after the chaos of the ballroom. The Dowager poured tea with practiced hands while studying Sophia with unnerving intensity. "Lord Blackwood hurt you," she said. "Not a question." "Yes, Your Grace. And my son offered to marry you to protect you from further harm." "Yes, Your Grace. That's remarkably like him." The Dowager handed Sophia a teacup. "Alexander has always had an overdeveloped sense of responsibility. When he was a boy, he collected wounded animals, birds with broken wings, dogs that had been beaten. He'd nursed them back to health with the same fierce dedication he later brought to military campaigns." "Mother," Alexander said warningly, "I'm simply explaining to Lady Ashworth that you have a history of rescuing creatures in distress, dear. She should know what she's getting into." The Dowager turned back to Sophia. "My son is a good man, but he's damaged. War leaves scars you can't see. He has nightmares. He withdraws into silence for days. He's forgotten how to be gentle, if he ever knew." "I don't need to be gentle," Sophia said quietly. "I need to be safe. There's a difference." The Dowager's expression shifted to something that might have been approved. "You're stronger than you look, aren't you?" "I've had to be, Your Grace." "Yes, I suppose you have." The Dowager set down her teacup. "Very well. Alexander, you'll marry this girl tomorrow with my blessing. Lady Ashworth, you'll stay here tonight, in the guest wing, properly chaperoned. Your uncle will likely come calling in the morning, demanding explanations. I'll handle him." "He'll be angry," Sophia warned. "Let him be angry. He arranged your engagement to a man who abused you. He has no moral ground to stand on." The Dowager stood. "Now, both of you should rest. Tomorrow will be exhausting, and you'll need your strength for the battles ahead." After the Dowager left, Alexander and Sophia sat in silence for a long moment. "Thank you," Sophia finally said. "Don't thank me yet. We haven't actually accomplished anything except creating a massive scandal. You stood between me and Edmund. You believed me without question. You offered me a way out." Sophia met his eyes. "That's not nothing, Alexander." Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, or gratitude. "I meant what I said. This is a practical arrangement. I'm not offering you love or romance or passionate devotion. I'm offering safety and respect and a partnership between two people who need each other for different reasons." "I understand." "Do you?" He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Sophia, I'm not a good man. War made sure of that. I've killed people. I've made decisions that still haunt me. I don't sleep well. I don't trust them easily. I'm not going to suddenly transform into some devoted husband who writes you poetry and worships at your feet." "Good," Sophia said. "I've had quite enough of men who write poetry and make grand declarations while hurting me behind closed doors. I'd rather have honesty and respect than false devotion." Alexander studied her for a long moment. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone more broken, more afraid." "I am broken," Sophia said quietly. "I am afraid. But I'm also angry, Alexander. I'm furious that I've spent 2 years being hurt by a man everyone thinks is wonderful. I'm enraged that society would rather I suffer in silence than cause a scandal by leaving. I'm done being afraid. I'd rather be angry. A slow smile crossed Alexander's face, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. I understand anger. Anger kept me alive through 15 years of war. Anger is useful. Then we understand each other. Perhaps we do. They sat together in the quiet sitting room, two damaged people who'd found an unexpected alliance in the middle of a ballroom scandal. Not love. Not yet. Possibly not ever. But understanding. And that, Sophia thought, might be enough. Dawn came too quickly. Sophia woke in an unfamiliar bedroom, disoriented for a moment before memory crashed back. The library. Alexander. The public confrontation with Edmund. The engagement was announced to half of London. She was getting married today, to a man she'd met less than 12 hours ago. A knock at the door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. A maid entered, followed by the Dowager Duchess. "Good morning, my dear. I've brought breakfast and a wedding dress. Well, one of my old gowns altered to fit you. We can't have you married in that torn ball gown, can we?" Sophia stared at the elegant ivory silk the Dowager laid across the bed. This was real. This was actually happening. "Your Grace, I should tell you, I don't love your son. This marriage is practical. Yes, I gathered that." The Dowager poured tea. "Love is a luxury, child. Respect and safety are necessities. My own marriage began as an arrangement, and it grew into genuine affection over time. Perhaps yours will as well. Perhaps it won't. Either way, you'll be protected, which is considerably more than Lord Blackwood offered you." There was another knock, sharper, angrier. A male voice carried through the door. "I demand to see my niece immediately." Sophia's blood ran cold. "Uncle William." The Dowager's expression hardened. "Remain here, Lady Ashworth. I'll handle your uncle." She swept from the room, and Sophia heard raised voices in the corridor. "You cannot keep her from me. She's my responsibility. She's a grown woman making her own choices." Lord Ashworth. "Choices?" "She's hysterical." Blackwood explained everything. "She's been unstable for months, prone to fancies and delusions. She needs proper guidance, not encouragement in this madness. My son examined her injuries personally. Bruises don't lie, Lord Ashworth. Bruises from her own clumsiness. The girl is forever stumbling. And now she's inventing stories to excuse breaking a perfectly good engagement." The door opened. Not the Dowager, but Alexander, dressed for a wedding in dark formal attire that made him look even more imposing than usual. "Get dressed," he said quietly to Sophia. "We're leaving now. The chapel is prepared." "But my uncle." "Your uncle is explaining to my mother why he knowingly placed his niece with an abusive man. She's taking great pleasure in destroying his arguments." Alexander's smile was sharp. "He also made the mistake of suggesting I'm acting rashly. I informed him that I've made split-second battlefield decisions that saved hundreds of lives. So I'm quite confident in my ability to recognize when a woman needs rescuing." Despite everything, Sophia laughed. "What did he say to that?" "Nothing intelligible. He's currently sputtering in the entrance hall while my mother explains exactly how ruined his reputation will be if he continues protesting." Alexander moved to the window, giving her privacy. "But I'd rather not give him time to gather reinforcements. Can you be ready in 20 minutes? "Yes." "Good. I'll be outside the door." Sophia dressed quickly, her hands shaking only slightly as she fastened the ivory silk. The dress fit perfectly. The Dowager must have worked through the night with her seamstresses to alter it. When she emerged, Alexander was indeed waiting, his expression unreadable. "You look beautiful," he said, and for the first time, Sophia heard something other than practicality in his voice, something that might have been genuine admiration. "Thank you." They walked together through Thornhill Manor, past shocked servants and scandalized guests who'd apparently stayed the night. Sophia heard whispers following them. "Married in such haste. Must be a reason. How improper." But Alexander's steady presence beside her made the gossip feel distant, unimportant. The chapel was small, intimate. The dowager waited inside with 2 footmen as witnesses. No other guests, no ceremony, just the practical business of binding 2 lives together. The vicar looked uncomfortable but proceeded. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here. Sophia listened to the familiar words with a sense of unreality. Yesterday morning, she'd woken engaged to Edmund, trapped in a nightmare she couldn't escape. Now she stood beside a scarred warrior who promised protection instead of poetry, safety instead of false devotion. Do you, Alexander Edward Thornhill, take this woman? I do. His voice was steady, certain. And do you, Sophia Catherine Ashworth, take this man? Sophia looked at Alexander, at his scarred face and winter-steel eyes, at the rigid posture that spoke of old wounds and older discipline, at the man who'd believed her without question and stood between her and harm without hesitation. I do. The vicar pronounced them husband and wife. Alexander bent and kissed her cheek, chaste and brief, a formality rather than affection. Thank you, Sophia whispered. Don't thank me yet, Alexander replied. The hard part comes next. They returned to Thornhill Manor as husband and wife to find chaos. Edmund had apparently arrived shortly after they'd left for the chapel, demanding to see Sophia, accusing Alexander of kidnapping and coercion, threatening legal action. The dowager had handled him with aristocratic ruthlessness. I informed Lord Blackwood that his reputation would not survive a public examination of how Lady Ashworth acquired her injuries, she told them over tea. I also mentioned that the Duke of Thornhill has considerable influence in the House of Lords, and certain investigations into Lord Blackwood's financial dealings might be initiated if he continues making trouble. His financial dealings? Sophia asked. Your former fiancé has gambling debts that would make a sailor blush, the dowager said calmly. I may have implied that Alexander's banker friends might be encouraged to call in those debts. Immediately, Alexander looked at his mother with something approaching respect. You're devious. I'm practical, dear. Just like you. She smiled at Sophia. Welcome to the family, Duchess. I suspect we'll get along splendidly. The title took Sophia's breath away. Duchess. She was the Duchess of Thornhill now. Not Lady Ashworth, dependent on her uncle's charity. Not Edmund's possession. Her own person with her own power. That evening, after the dowager retired and the house fell quiet, Alexander led Sophia to the ducal apartments. 2 bedrooms, connected by a sitting room. Private, separate, practical. This is your room, Alexander said, opening a door to reveal an elegant chamber. Mine is through there. The sitting room belongs to us both. You have complete privacy. I won't enter your bedroom without permission. Thank you. Sophia stepped inside, overwhelmed by the luxury. The bed alone was larger than her entire room at her uncle's house. Sophia. Alexander remained in the doorway. I need you to understand something. This marriage is real in the eyes of the law and the church. You're my wife. But that doesn't give me any rights to your body or your affection. What happened with Blackwood, that will never happen here. You're safe. Always. The tension Sophia hadn't realized she'd been holding released all at once. I believe you. Good. He turned to go, then paused. If you need anything at all, I'm right through that door. And Sophia, welcome home. He left, closing the door softly behind him. Sophia sank onto the bed, her wedding dress pooling around her, and finally allowed herself to cry. Not from sadness or fear, but from relief so intense it was almost painful. She was free. She was safe. She was home. Several weeks passed in careful adjustment. Alexander kept his distance, giving Sophia space to breathe, to explore her new home, to begin healing from 2 years of constant fear. They had meals together, breakfast and dinner, at least. Conversation was stilted at first, both of them uncertain how to navigate this strange partnership. But gradually they found common ground. Books, primarily. Alexander's library became their shared sanctuary. You've read Wollstonecraft? Alexander asked one evening, finding Sophia curled in his reading chair with a vindication of the rights of woman. My mother gave me her copy before she died. She said a woman's mind was her greatest defense against those who would control her. Your mother was wise. Alexander settled into the opposite chair. What do you think of her arguments? And they genuinely talked about philosophy and politics and ideas. Alexander didn't dismiss her opinions or patronize her intelligence. He argued with her when they disagreed, listened when she made valid points, and admitted when she changed his mind. It was intoxicating. Sophia found herself seeking out his company, drawn to the library each evening, anticipating their conversations with something that felt dangerously like eagerness. You're smiling more, Alexander observed one evening. I have reasons to smile now. Good. His expression softened. You should smile, Sophia. You have a beautiful smile. The compliment, simple and sincere, made her heart flutter in a way Edmund's elaborate flattery never had. But Alexander remained carefully distant. He never touched her beyond the perfunctory requirements of propriety, never entered her bedroom, never suggested their marriage become anything more than the practical arrangement they'd agreed to. Sophia told herself she was grateful. This was what she wanted, safety without demands, respect without obligation. So why did she feel increasingly disappointed each night when Alexander bid her good night and retreated to his own bedroom? The change came on a Tuesday afternoon when Sophia was walking in the gardens. A man approached, someone she didn't recognize, and she thought nothing of it until he came too close, his hand reaching for her arm. Lady Sophia? I have a message from Lord Blackwood. Sophia jerked back, but the man's grip tightened. He wants you to know that a duchess can become a widow. The man's words cut off as Alexander appeared seemingly from nowhere, wrenching the man away from Sophia with controlled violence that spoke of military training. Within seconds, the stranger was on the ground, Alexander's knee on his back, his arm twisted at an angle that made him cry out. Who sent you? Alexander's voice was deadly calm. Blackwood. He paid me, said to frighten her. Bad choice. Alexander hauled the man to his feet and shoved him toward two groundskeepers who'd come running. Take him to the magistrate. Attempted assault on the Duchess of Thornhill. Then Alexander turned to Sophia, and she saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before, raw, unguarded fear. Did he hurt you? His hands hovered near her arms, not touching, but desperate to check for injuries. I'm fine. You came before he could threaten you, before he could lay hands on my wife. Alexander's voice shook. Sophia, I'm sorry. I should have anticipated that Blackwood might try something. I should have protected you better. You did protect me. You were there. I almost wasn't. His hands were trembling now. I was in the library and something, instinct maybe, made me look out the window. If I'd been 5 minutes later. But you weren't. Sophia reached up and took his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. Alexander, you saved me. Again. Something broke in his expression. Without warning, he pulled her against his chest, his arms wrapping around her with desperate strength. I can't lose you, he said into her hair. I know that's not part of our arrangement. I know we agreed this was practical, not romantic. But Sophia, somewhere in the past month, you became essential. You became the reason I got out of bed in the morning. You became the person I want to talk to about everything. You became mine. Not as a possession but as something I can't name but desperately need. Sophia's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Alexander, I'm in love with you. The words came out rough, almost angry. I didn't plan it. I didn't want it. Love makes you vulnerable and vulnerability gets you killed in war. But I can't help it. I love your intelligence and your strength and the way you argue with me about philosophy. I love that you smile more now. I love that you've made my cold house feel like a home. I love you, Sophia. And I know that wasn't part of our agreement. And if you want to maintain the distance we established, I'll respect that. But I needed you to know. Sophia kissed him. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was fierce and desperate and full of every emotion she'd been holding back for weeks. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Alexander stared at her with wonder. I love you too, Sophia said. I've been falling in love with you for weeks, but I thought this was just practical for you. I thought you'd rescued me out of duty. Not because you saw something worth loving. Something worth loving? Alexander's laugh was incredulous. Sophia, you're everything worth loving. You're brilliant and brave, and you challenge me, and you make me want to be better than the broken soldier I am. You're not broken. You're scared. There's a difference. He kissed her then, soft and reverent, like she was precious beyond measure. How did I get so lucky? You burst into a library looking for sanctuary, Sophia said, smiling against his lips, and found me instead. Best thing that's ever happened to me. They stood in the garden, wrapped in each other's arms, until the afternoon sun began to set. Then Alexander took her hand and led her back to the house. Not to separate bedrooms, but together, finally, completely. Are you certain? He asked at her bedroom door. We don't have to. I don't expect. Alexander. Sophia pulled him inside. Stop being noble and kiss your wife. He did. 6 months later, Sophia stood in the library, their library now, reading correspondence while Alexander worked at his desk. Edmund has fled to the continent, she said. His creditors finally caught up with him. Good riddance. Alexander didn't look up from his papers. Though I'm almost disappointed. I was hoping for a reason to call him out. Dueling is illegal, Your Grace. Since when have I cared about that? Sophia laughed and crossed to him, reading over his shoulder. Agricultural reports? The Yorkshire estates need new irrigation systems. I'm calculating costs. He pulled her into his lap. You're distracting me, Duchess. Good. You work too much. Someone has to manage our holdings, particularly now that we have an heir to consider. Sophia's hand moved instinctively to her still flat stomach. We don't know yet if it's a son. Boy or girl, I don't care. Alexander's hand covered hers. As long as you're both healthy, we will be. She turned to face him. I'm not fragile, Alexander. Pregnancy isn't a battlefield injury. No, but you're carrying my child, which makes you infinitely precious and also gives me permission to worry excessively. You always worry excessively. True. He kissed her, soft and lingering. But you love me anyway. I do. Sophia traced the scar on his face, the one that had frightened her the first night they met. Now it was dear to her, a mark of his survival, his strength. Thank you for saving me. You saved me too, Sophia. You gave me a reason to live instead of just surviving. A knock at the door interrupted them. The dowager entered, followed by servants carrying tea and the afternoon post. Don't stop on my account, she said dryly, watching them untangle themselves. I'm delighted you've finally admitted you're desperately in love. Took you long enough. We were maintaining propriety, Mother, Alexander said. Nonsense. You were both being stubborn. The dowager settled into her favorite chair. I have news. Lady Arabella Fitzroy is getting married to a wealthy American. Caused quite a scandal. Also, your uncle has written Sophia. He wishes to reconcile. He can wish all he likes, Sophia said coolly. I have no interest in reconciling with a man who sold me to an abuser. That's my girl. The dowager smiled approvingly. I told him as much in my reply. Very satisfying. They took tea together, the three of them, conversation flowing easily. This had become their routine. Afternoons in the library, evenings together, a family built on choice rather than obligation. Later, after the dowager retired, Alexander and Sophia remained in their sanctuary. Do you ever regret it? Alexander asked. The way we married, the scandal, the haste. Never. Sophia took his hand. You gave me freedom when I was trapped. You gave me respect when I'd been treated as property. You gave me love when I'd forgotten what it felt like. Why would I regret the best decision I ever made? Even though I'm difficult and damaged and prone to nightmares? Especially because of that. She kissed him. You're real, Alexander. You're honest. You're the opposite of every man who pretended to be perfect while hiding cruelty. I'll take your difficult, damaged honesty over false perfection any day. "I love you," he said simply. "I love you too, now and always." They stood together in the library where it had all begun, where Sophia had burst through the door fleeing harm, where Alexander had looked up and recognized someone who needed saving, where two damaged people had found unexpected sanctuary in each other. Outside, rain fell against the windows. Inside, fire crackled in the hearth. And between them grew something neither had expected. Not just safety or respect or practical partnership, but genuine, fierce, unshakable love. The War Duke and his rescued bride, building a life based on honesty and healing and the fundamental truth that sometimes the best love stories begin with two people simply trying to survive, only to discover they'd rather thrive together.